The AAC Report is brought to you by Blake Blahut of Realty One Group. Whether you're looking to buy your very first home or looking to downsize or upgrade, call Blake Blahut anytime at 407-748-0484. Welcome to the AAC Report only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for joining us this week. It's championship week, and deja vu all over again as West Division champ Memphis hosts East Division champion Cincinnati for the second consecutive week after the Tigers took last week's encounter 34-24 to claim the West and host the title game. We will break it down shortly with Marc Narducci of the Philadelphia Inquirer. He covers Temple, which was a common opponent for both teams, as the Owls beat Memphis and lost a close game to Cincinnati. Also coming up on the show, we begin our scouting reports on men's basketball, as Sam and Dustin from the Scott Holman podcast will be here to talk Houston Cougars basketball. Before we get to all that, let's recap the final week of the regular season. Jamel Carruthers rushed for career highs of 188 yards and 5 touchdowns as Navy beat Houston 56-41. The 5 rushing TDs just one shy of the conference record. Navy finishes at 7-1 in conference, just losing out on the West Division as they tied Memphis for the conference lead but lost their head-to-head matchup. The midshipmen will take a 9-2 overall record into the annual Army-Navy game next weekend. Houston's first campaign under Dana Holgorsen goes down as 4-8 overall, 2-6 in league play. Shane Buechele passed for 3 touchdowns, Xavier Jones ran for 2 scores, and SMU closed the regular season with a 37-20 win over Tulane. The Mustangs finished 10-2 overall, 6-2 in conference. Tulsa bowl eligible for the second straight year, finishing 6-6 overall, 3-5 in conference. Anthony Russo threw 2 touchdown passes to Brandon Mack, and Ramon Davis ran for 105 yards in a score as Temple rolled to a 49-17 victory over UConn, sending the Huskies on their way out of the AAC with a second consecutive winless record in conference at 0-8, 2-10 overall. Temple wraps up an 8-4 season with a 5-3 conference mark. Zach Smith threw for a career-high 5 touchdown passes, and Shamari Brooks ran for a career-high 202 yards as Tulsa beat East Carolina 49-24. And the Golden Hurricane finished with a 4-8 record, 2-6 in conference. East Carolina also finished 4-8, but was 1-7 on the conference season. And time now for my Nichols Worth on UCF's 34-7 takedown of South Florida, because 2 cents is not enough. A successful season for the Knights. Maybe a little disappointment because it's not another undefeated regular season, bowl bound for a New Year's Six bowl game, but nonetheless, they still had a very good season, getting 9 wins. Had their difficulties on the road, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Tulsa, but they've kept their home winning streak alive, which is a beautiful thing to take into next season, and getting to conclude the season with a win over their rival is certainly sweet indeed. And the Bulls, man, their only move is to be kind of punkish in Bush League, and it's the only move they have. And it's not very good. And they're not good enough to back up that kind of attitude. A little pregame skirmish they started, and then on the Adrian Killens tackle when they kept going after the whistle, and Killens got penalized for the face mask pulling off the helmet. And the officials let that get totally out of hand. They should have thrown a flag for the pregame infraction to set the tone that they weren't going to allow any shenanigans. And the officiating was awful at best. It just is terrible. And this game would probably be Exhibit A if you want to put it out there. You know, Mike Oresco's got to clean this thing up. The league officials they throw the most flags of any conference, and they just come off looking like they don't know what they're doing half the time. 22 accepted penalties in this ball game. And I'm sorry, guys who wear the officiating uniform, we're not there to see you. And all these flags lead to 4-hour football games. Absolutely ridiculous. The Knights finish again 9-3, 6-2 conference record. South Florida 4-8, 2-6 in league play, and now looking for a new head coach as Charlie Strong was dismissed on Sunday with the Bulls having only won 4 of their last 18 games. This week's Coaches Teleconference obviously focuses on the AAC Championship game, where Commissioner Mike Oresco provided a sort of mini State of the Conference address.
First of all, I want to congratulate Cincinnati and Memphis on winning their divisions and playing in our championship game, which, again, will be on ABC for the 5th straight year. First of all, I want to congratulate Cincinnati and Memphis on winning their divisions and playing in our championship game, which, again, will be on ABC for the 5th straight year, and this is absolutely terrific exposure for the conference. This has been a great year for the league. It's one of the deepest we've ever seen our conference. We obviously have an 11-1 team in Memphis. We have 2 10-2 teams, Cincinnati and SMU. We have a 9-2 team in Navy that could be 10-2. They play Army down the road. Obviously, our West Division has been one of the strongest in all of college football. UCF in the East is 9-3 and has lost 3 games by a grand total of 7 points. Temple is 8-4. USF, which struggled this year, beat BYU, incidentally, which defeated Boise, as you know. So again, as I said, this is the strongest top to bottom we've ever been. I think many, if not all of you, have seen some of my recent comments. I feel very strongly about them. The double standard that exists right now with respect to the CFP committee and even with the polls, although they've been a little fairer to us. And the concern I have is that our conference doesn't get the respect it deserves. This year, in the computer rankings, we have been even or ahead of the ACC at times, the Pac-10 at times, or Pac-12, excuse me, at times. Right now, we're literally almost even. The lower numbers are better. The ACC is 56.5 in the computer rankings. These are the 6 computer polls that were once used for the BCS, Sagarin and Anderson, Hester, Colley. They're all well respected, and people look at them very carefully. We are at 57.8. We're right there. We're 16 points ahead of the Mountain West, and we're 20, almost 23 points ahead of the Sun Belt, and that's been pretty much the case all year. So in terms of the computer polls, our conference is obviously very strong. Our strength of schedule, and this is very interesting because this is a metric that is used by the college football playoff. It's the Sports Source metric, and basically our strength of schedule, the lower number here is also better. Memphis is at 57, Cincinnati is at 45. Again, low number is better. Navy 54, SMU 56. Our highest of our top teams is UCF at 90. In the meantime, Boise is at 95 and Appalachian State 106. So compare that to our top teams, 57, 45, 54, 56. And here we have Boise at 95 and Appalachian State at 106. And that strength of schedule metric is well respected, and it is, again, it's consulted by the committee. We are, and this is an eye-popping number, we are 27-1 against all teams from the non-power conferences, and that includes Army and BYU as well as the G5. And the G5 were 14-1 against a group of 5 teams. The only loss being the Temple loss up at Buffalo, which is a very good team. We played a brutal, P5 schedule. We played, at Ohio State. We played at Auburn. We played at Oklahoma. We played Wisconsin. We played at Notre Dame. We played Oklahoma State. We played at Michigan State. The list goes on and on. We've played a really, really challenging non-conference schedule, and we've also won some key non-conference games. SMU won at TCU, not an easy thing to do. And as I've said, they did it in regulation, didn't need overtime. The other thing that concerns me is, again, I think that SMU at 10-2, and I think Navy is ranked, but SMU should be ranked. I think a 9-3 UCF deserve to be ranked. I ask myself, do these results mean anything? You can compare some things that I think are significant, and one is you have Baylor in the mix for a playoff spot. Now, if you compare Memphis's resume to Baylor, Baylor's non-conference schedule, and this is not to knock Baylor. Matt Rule's done a terrific job there. But let's just look at the facts, and that's what I've been saying for the last 3 weeks. Let's just look at the facts. Baylor's non-conference schedule was Stephen F. Austin, 3-9, UTSA, 4-8, Rice, 3-9, whereas Memphis played Ole Miss, which has played in the toughest division in college football and played very representatively all season. In addition, they played at Louisiana Monroe, a team that took Florida State to overtime. Their only loss was on the road at Temple. Obviously, Baylor lost to a good Oklahoma team, but at home. And that resume, again, some of the teams they played, 4-8, 3-9, 5-7, another 5-7 team. The resumes are very, very comparable. But in the meantime, Baylor sits, high up in the rankings, looking for a spot in the playoff. And here's Memphis, down in the, where they've been all season in the 18 range. And now they're 16 in the latest AP poll, and Baylor's up at 8. Well, tell me why that's fair, and why why the points I'm making are not valid. So again, that's the kind of thing I want to continue to hammer away at, and we'll continue to play these challenging non-conference schedules. No matter, even though we play the cream of the crop, as you know, but we also play a lot of teams that are just a shade below. Obviously, Washington State, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Illinois, Oklahoma State all present, good tests. Stanford this year, and UCLA was beaten by Cincinnati. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that I think we should be talking about, and I think our league is, again, it's the strongest it's ever been. I'm very proud of them. Obviously to have all these teams at records 11-1, 10-2, 10-2, 9-2, 9-3, 8-4, our top teams. Our lower tier teams have played very competitively all season and have come close to making some big upsets, including Tulsa, which obviously came close to beating some of our best teams. Did beat Wyoming and did win out at San Diego State in a rout. That's a team that Boise struggled with well into the fourth quarter. So again, all of these things are things that ought to be cited. I'm certainly, Chuck, willing to take some questions. But in the meantime, I just want to congratulate our league for continuing to improve at all levels. Our recruiting, our attendance, again, the strength of schedules that we play, the results on the field, our tremendous roster of coaches. I'm just pleased and proud of what we've done again this year. And it's not the first year we've done this. This has been a continuing thing. In 2015, we had four teams in the top 25, I think 5 at various points during the season. We've had outstanding teams in 16, 17. We've had 5, top 10 victories. No G5 team has had a top 10 victory over the years. We've had 44 victories over the so-called P5 since 2000, I believe, 14. This has been, an outstanding conference over the years, and it's only going to get better down the road.
So those were the opening comments from AAC Commissioner Mike Oresco, a mini state of the conference, if you will, opening up the coaches teleconference this week. Now let's turn our attention to this week's title game. And for the second consecutive week at the Liberty Bowl, Memphis plays host to Cincinnati. The Tigers took last week's affair 34-24 to win the AAC West Division. Tigers head coach Mike Norvell.
Absolutely. We're obviously excited about being in this position once again. Our third straight West Division title is something that we take a great deal of pride in. I thought the West Division this year was incredible, probably the best that it's been since I've been here. The path which we had to take to get here, some of the adversity that showed up, showed a great response from our players. And that's the thing that I'm probably most pleased with is just the way that they've worked and prepared throughout this year. We were in a situation we had to win Friday to have a chance to do that. And Cincinnati is an outstanding ball club. We knew that we knew that going in, and it would just further validated throughout the game just the talent and the level of coaching that they have within their program. It sets up another week and a championship game that is going to be a great one for the conference. It's going to be an unbelievable contest, and we're honored to be able to be a part of it. And it's just so great for our city to be able to actually host it. The last two we've had to go on the road. but it's going to be a great showcase, knowing it's going to be another ABC national broadcast. It's going to be wonderful for all involved.
Ben Bryant got the start at quarterback for the Bearcats for an injured Desmond Ritter. Bearcats head coach Luke Fickell talking about that game and having to face the Tigers for a second consecutive week on the road.
Well, this is we have one goal in the program. We don't talk about it a whole lot because we, focused mainly on objectives. But when we came here, we said our one goal is to play for championships. And for the first time, we really truly have an opportunity to play for a championship. And that's what we're excited about. Coming off a loss is difficult and tough, and the situation where you got to go back to Memphis again. But the reality is, as I hit our guys with it, 95% of college football is done. They're done until the bowl season, and there's a lot of people who trade places with you to have an opportunity to play in the championship game and to go out and compete again. And so we're excited about it. I think our guys are excited about it. It's a little bit different just with the play at a Friday game, and now you got an extra day and a half of some sorts to prepare. But nonetheless, this is the first time. This is a little bit uncharted grounds for me and for us, for our program, and we're really excited.
And now we dig deeper into the big AAC Championship game between Memphis and Cincinnati. Marc Narducci of the Philadelphia Inquirer is going to join us to do just that. Marc, as you know, he's been on the program before, covers Temple, and Temple is a common opponent of both teams. So we thought it'd be great to get Marc's perspective on that. Marc, thanks for being here.
Good to be here, Jeff.
So let's look at Cincinnati. And Temple and Cincinnati were teams that are very much alike. They live with the run game, play solid defense, and that ended up being just a 2-point victory for the Bearcats. Can you tell me what your impressions are of Cincinnati?
I really liked them. I mean, I like their toughness. I love Michael Warren as a running back. And they, they're well coached. Lou Fickell's done a good job with them. I thought, especially against Temple, sometimes they were a little overly aggressive defensively. But still, I really I liked what I saw from them. What I didn't like is obviously their quarterback. I didn't like the fact that he wasn't able to throw very well, and then he didn't play last week against Memphis because of the shoulder problems that he's had. So that's I guess a question. They used the redshirt freshman last week, the Bryant, I believe it
Ben
is.
Bryant,
and,
yes.
We'll see what happens, because I thought that's really what held them back last year when they lost to Temple, and this year when really, if Temple played better special teams, they would have lost again.
So let's look at Memphis, and this is the team that Temple took down. And what was the keys to Temple securing that victory?
Well, I'll tell you why. It was 30-28, but Temple made big stops, when it really mattered, and again, they did a really good job of containing what I think is a very, very dangerous Memphis passing game. They kind of held them in check a little bit, and I thought that was the real difference. I think I'm really impressed with Memphis and the offense and everything like that. And I thought Temple did a good job in that.
And as far as the game last week, Memphis had the opportunity; they had to win to get in and secure the West Division. Cincinnati was only playing to host the game. What do you think the implications are of them playing consecutive weeks? Does that favor either team?
Well, I think it favors Memphis because Cincinnati has to go there again. So I think it definitely favors Memphis. I think Memphis knows that maybe it could get a Cotton Bowl, bid with the win possibly. So I think it favors Memphis. I think Memphis obviously has the much better passing game. So I think that's going to be a whole key in this. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I really like Brady White. I think he's a really good field general. 32 TDs, 8 interceptions. I think he's going to be the difference this week.
Yeah, and you can definitely see how he has progressed. He certainly has grown into the role and taking the leadership of that football team, and just a wealth of weapons that they have. It's almost an abundance of riches.
Yeah, it really is, and Mike Norvell has done a really good job with that offense. The kid Kenneth Gainwell, he's rushed for almost 1,400 yards this season. So they have a really good balance between passing, receiving, and I just like the way they operate. I was very, very impressed with them.
Yeah, and as you are pretty well aware, Power 5 conferences like to raid the American for coaches. Temple has certainly been a victim of that many times, and now Mike Norvell is on the radar for a lot of teams. Wondering if any of that chatter, if it was going to be a distraction, I think we would have saw it last week, but they certainly has not quelled the fever of the intensity of the talk about him potentially going to Florida State or Arkansas.
Yeah, a lot of people, although Arkansas just hired a coach from the AAC, that didn't work out too well, did it?
No.
I mean, you're going to hear it. You heard it a bit last year as well. So whatever happens. But he's done a tremendous job. But keep in mind, Jeff, taking that next step isn't always easy. Justin Fuente has had an on and off time at Virginia Tech. Going from the AAC, and there have been other coaches. Look at Jeff Collins. I know that was a first-year rebuilding situation at Georgia Tech, but they really struggled. So having success at this level doesn't mean it goes up to the next level, because even though you're going to a level where you get more spending, you get more, you just get more things at your availability, so do all your opponents. So you don't actually have an advantage over them. So we'll just have to see. But no matter what he does, Norvell's done a great job with this Memphis program.
Yeah, and Scott Frost is another one at Nebraska who finding that sledding a little bit more difficult out in the Midwest. So do you think...
I'll give you one that worked is Matt Rule.
Yes.
Going from Temple to Baylor.
Yeah.
Matt Rule may be in the NFL by this time next year. So,
wow.
that one has worked. So
yeah, that's definitely, he has done a bang-up job there. So do you think the third time the charm is for Memphis? They've now going to the third straight championship game. This time they get the home field advantage. Do you think they cash it in?
I do. I do. Like I said, after I saw Temple beat them, I said to myself, how did they do this? Because this is a really talented team. Being at home helped. There was that controversial replay and all that, which was the right call anyway. But still, I think Memphis is ready to do this and ready to win. And I'll tell you why. It shows how strong the AAC is with these two teams in there. These are two quality teams. And Cincinnati had to do a lot of, had to win some really close games, had to beat UCF by 4 and beat Temple by 2 just to get there. So I really think, the league is a really good league. It's by far the best non-Power 5 league in the country, and I just think the competition's great. Yeah,
and Temple, finishing 8-4, was also on the doorstep there in the Eastern Division. And how would you grade Rod Carey's first season at the helm?
I thought it was solid. I wrote a story recently on Inquirer.com about the special teams really let Temple down this season, and I thought the biggest mistake Rod made was they had one of the best special teams coaches in the country, in Ed Foley, and he was kind of demoted into a role where he wouldn't have been a coach in practice. It was an administrative role, though he would have had a role in special teams, and he left to go with Matt Rule at Baylor. And I think that really, really hurt them, and it was clearly an example in the Cincinnati game when they get a PAT block. Cincinnati returns it 98 yards for two points. They They had the punter fumble a snap, put his knee down on the 6-yard line, and set up a Cincinnati field goal. So I think that's the one criticism of Rod Carey was the special teams. They had the AAC Special Teams Player of the Year, Isaiah Wright, and he was not a factor this year on special teams. They fair caught a lot of punts and everything like that. So I think that was the one factor. But I also give him credit. I thought he did a good job. He got the seniors to buy in early, and I thought they'd win 9 games. They won 8, so they were right near expectations and in what they did.
Well, Mark, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to give us a preview of the AAC Championship game and talking about the AAC with us throughout this season. Thanks so much for your time, and let folks know where they can follow you on Twitter.
At SJNARD, Jeff, and always good talking to you. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
The title game kicks off Saturday, 3:30 on ABC between Memphis and Cincinnati, the Tigers hosting at the Liberty Bowl. So let's give out the Player of the Week honors for the final week of the regular season. We mentioned Jamel Carruthers of Navy, the fullback, 188 yards, rushing 5 touchdowns on 18 carries, 10.4 yards per attempt in the Midshipmen's win over Houston. The Defensive Player of the Week is Bryce Huff of Memphis. He had game highs of 8 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles to go with 3.5 tackles in the win over Cincinnati. And the Special Teams Player of the Week, Chris Claybrooks of the Tigers. He staked them to an early lead in the win over Cincinnati with the opening kickoff return of 94 yards for a touchdown. And it's Memphis' 4th Special Teams TD of the year. Claybrooks finished the game with 126 yards on 3 kickoff returns, added 6 tackles and 2 pass breakups on their defensive effort. Coming up next, we begin our college hoop team breakdown. Sam and Dustin from the Scott Holman podcast will join me to talk about the Houston Cougars, where the AAC Report continues in just a moment. Are you tired of the endless money pit of paying rent? Do you have a home you need to sell for top dollar? Talk to the Hometown Advantage award-winning real estate professional and fellow UCF Knight, Blake Blahut of Realty One Group. Blake has proven to produce results and a smooth process for his clients all across Central Florida. Whether you're looking to buy your very first home or looking to downsize or upgrade, talk to Blake Blahut. Visit him at his website, Blake'sOrlandoHomes.com, or contact him anytime at 407-748-0484. Again, Blake'sOrlandoHomes.com and 407-748-0484. Get the hometown advantage by working with Blake.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fagley reminding you to tune in every Sunday morning, 9 to 10 a.m. on ESPN 580 Orlando for Knightline the morning after. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action. Once again, that's Knightline the morning after, every Sunday morning, 9 to 10 a.m. on ESPN 580 Orlando or TuneIn Radio. Go Knights and charge on.
Island H2O Live, a new wave of water park.
Sing, slide, and share your day away at Island H2O Live. Now open in Kissimmee, located off US 192 and State Road 429 on Inspiration Boulevard.
Island H2O Live.
All right, it's time to begin our basketball previews on the AAC Report. This time around, going to talk about the Houston Cougars. Dustin and Sam from the Scott and Holman podcast join us now to talk about the Cougs, guys. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. And before we talk about this season, let's kind of rewind a little bit to last year. A 33-4 record, AAC regular season champs, and a nice run in the NCAA tournament. Sweet 16 loss to Kentucky. This is a team that folks that thought had a lot of Final Four potential. How much of a disappointment was that, and what kind of fuel do you think that will be for this season?
I think considering what that team had, considering what they were going against Kentucky, obviously to come up so close, to really see the Final Four on the horizon and not get there, obviously that's disappointing. but I think the kind of season they had compared to what we had in the last 35 years of Cougar basketball since the end of Phi Slamma Jamma to now, I think for a lot of Cougar fans, it was just so incredible to see a team that won 33 games, was by every definition an elite basketball team, come that close and play that hard. What's so incredible about that group of guys, there were a few, high-end talents in there, Nate Hinton, Dejan Giroux, guys who were still around, but a lot of those guys weren't highly recruited. They were guys also who came to Houston, while there was still the old Hofheinz Pavilion, which was not the same facility it was 40 years before. Guys who bought into the vision of what Sampson, was selling, but not any reality. To that point, U of H, when a lot of those guys got here, was still a program going through a pretty serious, tournament drought. And not only did those guys buy in that, hey, we can change that, but I think they, achieved it and then some. I think they surpassed all of our wildest expectations of what we could have, a Cougar basketball program. Dustin and I, a lot of times to ourselves, we're just pinching ourselves and being like, after following this program for the last 10 to 15 years and just not seeing very much in return, just to have this incredible team full of guys who were completely bought in with this Hall of Fame coaches, I think more than we could possibly ask for.
You guys mentioned the fact that you had guys like Giroux and Hinton returning from last season. The great Corey Davis and Armani Brooks now are subtractions from the team. You get a great transfer in Quentin Grimes coming in from Kansas. So while you had a nice little nucleus in, a great reinforcement to come in along the way there.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. There's two ways to look at this team's roster as opposed to, coming from last year. One is to say that Houston lost 4 starters. They did, with not only the guys that you mentioned, but also Galen Robinson, who had been a 4-year starter at the point guard position, a real team general, and as well as Breon Brady, our starting center, was graduated as well. So that was one way to look at it. The other way to look at it was, Houston ran a 10-man rotation last year, and 6 of the 10 guys from that rotation are coming back, as well as adding Quentin Grimes, as you mentioned. So definitely lots of reason to be excited, despite, maybe if you just look at the top line, graduating 4 starters, it kind of looks like a lot, and it is. And we're definitely feeling, Galen Robinson and Corey Davis were 2 incredible defensive guards, and, what we've seen from the team so far this year is we're clearly missing the just tenacious defense. I think this team does have some potential, but is definitely missing having, 2 all-conference type defenders at the guard positions in Galen Robinson and Corey Davis, as well as some of the three-point shooting that those guys and Armani Brooks brought as well. So definitely, it's hard to lose players, but that's kind of been the history of Kelvin Sampson at U of H, is when Damian Dotson graduated. A lot of people thought Houston was going to drop off. Instead, they took another step. And, Rob Gray graduated. A lot of people thought Houston would drop off. And instead, they took another step. So, obviously, having probably the biggest senior class that Kelvin Sampson has had to replace since he's been at Houston. But, as you mentioned, guys like Quentin Grimes coming in, Justin Gorham, who's a set-out transfer from Towson that this coaching staff and the players have been talking up quite a bit, as well as getting some exciting freshmen in there. Caleb Mills, a freshman that we've already seen have the ability to put up some big offensive numbers. So definitely a lot of reasons to remain excited and think that this Cougar program not going to go through any kind of major rebuild despite losing a very talented senior class.
And you look so far at this season, you've got 6 guys averaging double-figure scoring. Got to really like the balance of how this thing is getting started.
The offensive potential in this team is pretty incredible. As great as last year's team was, and as much work as this current team has to do to equal what last year's team did, the offensive potential is higher than anything we've seen under Kelvin Sampson. Just the ability of these guys to score. I think the fact that we've had some pretty lousy halves of offensive basketball this year and are still 20th in Ken Palm's adjusted offensive efficiency, I think tells you how good this team can do when everything is clicking. You have Dejan Giroux, a guy who has kind of struggled this year. He was dealing with a broken hand. I think he's still somewhere kind of in the preseason in terms of his level of fitness, his sharpness, which happened last year. He dealt with some stuff in non-conference time last year, but he's an elite player when he's on at getting to the basket and at creating where there doesn't look like there's space to create. You have Quentin Grimes, who's a 5-star, and when he's on, looks every bit, of that recruiting pedigree guy who can score in so many different ways. And on and on, I can probably go down 5 or 6 guys and tell you what they do uniquely. I think Nate Hinton just does everything fairly well. He doesn't have one specific thing he's elite at, but leave him open, he can drill a three, he can get to the basket, he's a good free throw shooter, all that stuff. I think the one weakness offensively that we've seen so far, and even in space they've been good at this, but this is not as good of a three-point shooting team as last year. I think there does need to be some work from this team to figure out how can we score without just bombing threes, which is something last year's team could maybe get away with guys like Corey Davis and Armani Brooks who could get hot from deep, and that's not really so much a skill this year's group of guys have, as much as in stretches Quentin Grimes, Marcus Sasser, and even Nate Hinton have shown they can bomb from deep. This is a team that has to score different ways, but still, considering how young they are, considering what the guys have shown in flashes, just the sky is almost the limit.
So far this season, 3-2. One of the two losses to 11th ranked Oregon. And so far, and you guys didn't have a holiday tournament to play in, so they're going to go a little stretch before they play again on Wednesday night. What do you think about that downtime?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting way to do it. Houston also kicked off the season about a week later than everybody else. Pretty much, I think the first opening day was November the 5th. Houston didn't play one until the 12th. So everyone, I think, got about one or two games in before Houston really got going. And honestly, in the BYU game, one of the two losses, I felt like that may have been a factor. The fact that BYU looked like a team that had played a few more games than Houston had up until that point. I think they had 3 games coming into that one, where Houston had 1. The Cougars are going to get a Christmas tournament coming up here in a little bit, so going to make up some of those games. But yeah, it has kind of been an interesting schedule so far. Maybe could have been laid out a little bit better just in terms of which games are being played, but definitely some stuff to look forward to. Got South Carolina coming up this week. Got an Oklahoma State team that looks really good coming up the week after that. So definitely going to get plenty of chances to prove themselves. Obviously, the only 2 real, I think, good teams that Houston has played so far, they're going to kind of be names that pop out in the schedule. BYU and Oregon have both been losses so far. So regardless of how the games are played out, Houston obviously has got to go out there and start winning some of the games against some of the better teams on their schedule and building the kind of resume that they want.
And as you look towards this upcoming conference schedule, the American looks like another potential 4-bid conference for the NCAA tournament this year, and the conference just seems to keep getting better and better. Who are the teams that you guys have your eye on as far as competition goes?
I mean, any conversation like this has to start with Memphis. They have an extremely young team. I believe last time I looked on KenPom, they're the least experienced team in all 353 Division I teams, but have shown the unbelievable talent that you kind of expect. I think that all 7 of their incoming freshmen are ranked in the top 115 nationally. You have James Wiseman, who's a future high lottery pick. Precious Achiuwa, another big man. That's, I think, really, when I look at that team, there's obviously a bunch of guys that could rattle off in that team are quite good, but dealing with a front court as not only big but as skilled as Precious Achiuwa and James Wiseman, which we'll basically all have to do because his suspension ends in January, right when conference play is kicking off. I think that's going to be the big challenge for us, really the big challenge for everyone, is to figure out not only how to deal with Memphis's skill in the backcourt, which they have plenty of, but a front court that not only has the size, but is very skilled. Wichita State, I think, was a team I've had my eye on really since the second half of last season. They were kind of down compared to the standards of Greg Marshall and Wichita State over the years, but you kind of knew they're not going to be down for too long. This is a coach that's too good, a program that's too proud and has too much going for it to be an NIT team 2 seasons in a row, and they had a legitimate reason to be down last year. I think they replaced all but 1 or 2 guys on the roster, and you have that kind of turnover. It's going to be a challenge to sustain success, but they come back this year much more experienced, brought in some really interesting recruits, and I think will be – look, they won't be, I think, the team of 2 seasons ago. They aren't as senior-heavy, but they're going to kind of split the difference between last year's team, which was a solid team but an NIT team by definition, and the team 2 years ago, which was perennially a top 25 team. And then I think next season we start really worrying about them. And you can't count out Cincinnati. I think they've looked a little bit shaky at times this year. John Brannon is a completely different kind of coach than Mick Cronin, who had, a very smash mouth. I don't know if smash mouth works for basketball, but I think had that equivalent, very, slow pace and defense, and that's not what John Brannon wants to do. And I'll be curious to see if by conference time, since he is, ready to go. And Temple, I don't think we should be too surprised that Temple is, improving. Temple's, I think, one of the winningest programs in the sport's history. but kind of maybe fell off a little bit in Dunphy's last few years there, and nothing I've seen from their non-conference schedule makes me think they won't be in that group of 3 or 4 really good teams. They've passed every test that has gone their way, and even outside those 3 or 4, I think there's at least 4 or 5 other teams that on any given night can put the fear in you, can be a challenging road trip for the various contenders in this league. So yeah, it's a deeper league than I think we've seen before, and I'll be interested to see how it breaks out once the conference games start.
All right, and this one I would like for both of you to chip in on is, what do you see happening for the Cougars in the 2019-2020 campaign?
Yeah, so I think this team is going to do what we've seen from most of Kelvin Sampson's teams, which is kind of get better as the year goes along. Last year's team, as much as we talk about the 33-4 and all the Sweet 16 run and all that, tried really hard to lose to UT Rio Grande Valley early on in the season, and Houston had an early loss to Drexel. Was that 2 years ago? So that's kind of been a theme with Kelvin Sampson's team, and something he said at the beginning of last year's season was, hey, I don't know if this team's going to end up being very good. We've got some potential, but we're not there. Really kind of freaked some people out with the way he was not talking the team up. Obviously, the team ended up going 33-4, as you mentioned, so that ended up all right. And he kind of said the same thing at the beginning of this season of, I like our potential, but we got an awful long way to go yet. And everyone kind of, okay, we heard that last year and expected maybe some big things. So that BYU loss, maybe a bit of a reality check. But like we've kind of said, I think there's a ton of potential on this team. I do think Kelvin Sampson's going to get them into shape by the time conference season starts. So long-winded way of saying, I think Houston probably goes, maybe 12-6, 13-5, something like that, in a very tough conference. And I think we'll be right there with Memphis and maybe Wichita and Temple at the top of a very competitive conference. And normally 13-5 might not get you a regular season title. I mean, I think as competitive as this conference might be, I think if you go 13-5, you might be in a tie for first or something like that. So should be a really fun season, but expect the Cougars to do well.
If you gave me Houston or the field to win this conference, I admit I might lean towards the field just based how deep this league is, how many teams are going to be there at the top. Like Dustin said, I don't think this is going to be a team that ends the season the same place last year's team was, just because last year's team was special. I don't think this team isn't going to be good, but teams that go 33-4 aren't an annual occurrence here yet. At least I would like to think a year from now we're having a similar season as we had last year. But I just want to see this team play its best basketball in February, in March. And I think based on what Kelvin Sampson has done here at Houston, I think we can be pretty confident that that's going to happen. I expect this team to be kind of in the 6, 7, 8 seed range come March Madness, which isn't where they were last year. But, again, as long as it's trending towards, better basketball later in the season and looking ahead to next season where a lot of this roster is projected to be back. There's only one senior in the roster currently, Chris Harris Jr., one of our big men. And there is a scholarship situation where we go into next year, if everyone returns, we have one more scholarship than allotted, so there'll probably be at least 1 or 2 more guys that go. But I think regardless of scenarios, this team going into 2020 and 2021 will be the favorite to win this league. And in the meantime, I still think it's going to be quite a good team we have in Houston, but maybe not the standard of 2018, 2019, which was a pretty lofty standard.
Indeed. So last question, Kelvin Sampson has built such a tremendous program there. When he was hired for the job, did you expect it to be a stepping stone opportunity for him, and that he would be here building this program the way it is and setting his son up to take over when he finally calls it quits?
I remember when Dustin and I were texting about this in early 2014 because we were hearing the rumors that Kelvin Sampson, then Rockets assistant, was interested. And I think the consensus we came, I'll let Dustin answer most of this, was if Kelvin Sampson can't win here, we have to start questioning, are we ever going to win at Division I basketball? That's how grim it had gotten, in the immediate, aftermath of him arriving here. We were excited about getting him, but, even with him coming here, we weren't sure that all the things that plagued Houston basketball wouldn't be too much, even for a Hall of Fame coach like him.
Yeah, I remember my feeling being, we had been tossing some names out about guys who might be interested, and all of a sudden, Kelvin Sampson became the rumor, and also I was like, oh, yeah, that was way better than anything I had in mind. Yeah, if we could do that, that would be incredible. Of course you got to hire that guy. And I want to say my mindset at the time was probably something to the extent of, I remember there were some quotes that he had said about, really looking to go to a school where he can build something, which made sense because we had a big empty valley where our program should have been for the last several years, so there was plenty of space to build if that's what you wanted to do. So I remember kind of thinking maybe he wants to really take on a project. But I remember thinking that man, even if this is a stepping stone job, we haven't had a coach here in recent memory that did well enough here to use that as a stepping stone to go somewhere else. So even if that happens in a few years, fine, sign me up. I will take a few years of Kelvin Sampson coached basketball if it means getting to watch Houston be good for a while, even if that means, in a few years he goes somewhere else. I will absolutely sign up for that just because it had been, the last few coaches had not left for another job. They had gotten fired for not doing very good, which is even less fun than seeing your coach go somewhere else. So the fact that he turned down Arkansas, signed a long-term contract at Houston, his son Kellen, who has been, as our lead recruiter, has been doing a fantastic job bringing in some top recruits. And I'm not just saying that because he's been on our podcast a couple times and is a really good guy, but for him to potentially be sticking around in the long term as the head coach, and even knowing that we have Kelvin for what certainly at this point seems likely to be the rest of his career, however long he wants that to be. It is a constant wake up and pinch ourselves kind of thing, that this program just being the crater that it was not long ago, and now not just having success, having a brand new arena, playing games in front of a raucous crowd, having a coach that actually seems like he's going to stick around for the long term. It's hard to believe that it's happening, to be completely honest.
Well, Dustin and Sam, tell folks about the Scott Holman podcast for all your coverage of Houston Cougars sports.
Yeah, absolutely. You can search Scott Holman Podcast wherever podcasts are available. And we do every week, sometimes often twice a week, talking about Cougar sports, talking a little bit about AAC sports in general as well. So would love for y'all to listen in, and be sure to give us a follow on Twitter. We're very active Twitter users at SHPAWDCAST. It's SH Podcast, but with paw in there as a pun. So we love talking to everyone across the AAC Twitter sphere. So give us a follow and give us a listen.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks again for being on. Appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, always good to be talking to you, Jeff. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Dustin and Sam, they do a great job with their podcast, so make sure you give them a listen as well sometime. Honors for men's basketball for this week. The player of the week, Quentin Rose, senior guard from Temple, averaged 14 points, 8.7 rebounds, 5.7 assists per game, as Temple went 2-1 in the Advocare Orlando Invitational. He also almost had a triple-double against Davidson with 14 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists in the triple-double almost coming against Davidson. And in the 23-point win over Texas A&M, he had 19.6 rebounds and 4 assists. The freshman of the week, Boogie Ellis, the Memphis guard, helping to lead Memphis to an 83-78 victory over North Carolina State in the Barclays Center Classic in Brooklyn on Thanksgiving Day. Had a team-high 21 points, 7-11 from the field, including 2 3-pointers against the Wolfpack. The women's basketball honors player of the week is Megan Walker, the junior from UConn. Had a career outing at Dayton on Tuesday, a 23-point, 12-rebound double-double as the Huskies won that game 75-37, matched her career high in boards, and led all players in both scoring and rebounds. And the freshman of the week, DJ McCarty from Wichita State, averaged 12.5 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists, and 1.5 steals in Wichita State's 2-0 week wins over Houston Baptist and Oklahoma. In volleyball, for the second straight season, UCF and Cincinnati earned bids as AAC representatives in the NCAA Division I Volleyball Championship. The Knights and Bearcats were selected to compete in the tournament following the bracket announcement by the NCAA Selection Committee this past Sunday. A total of 32 teams, including UCF, earned automatic bids into the championship. As a conference tournament or regular season champion, Cincinnati was among the 32 remaining squads that claimed at-large bids. UCF secured its 10th all-time NCAA tournament appearance after winning the inaugural AAC tournament in Orlando on November 24th. The Knights logged number 22 RPI nationally with the 26th ranked strength of schedule. UCF set to face off against Florida State from the ACC at 4:30 on December 5th. That is Thursday in Gainesville. And number 10 seed Florida will be serving as the opening weekend host, taking on Alabama State. Cincinnati remains the only team in the history of the American to claim an at-large bid into the NCAA Championship by qualifying for the national tournament for the third time in 4 seasons. They entered the selection night, ranked 21st in their RPI, the highest of all teams in the American. The Bearcats will compete in their 13th NCAA tournament all-time, traveling to Pittsburgh to face VCU. That's at 4 p.m., and that will be on Friday. Number 6 seed and host Pittsburgh opens with Howard. The first and second rounds of the NCAA Championship will be contested Thursday through Saturday with regional play in the NCAA tournament slated for December 13th and 14th. And the final 4 teams will compete on December 19th and 21st at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, 3 teams from the AAC were selected for the National Invitational Volleyball Championship on Sunday night following the NCAA unveiling of their bracket. Tulane, Houston, and Tulsa set to represent the American in the 3rd edition of that tournament starting this week. Tulane returns for the second straight time to the NIVC, finishing as the 2018 runner-up after compiling a 4-1 run through the tournament before a loss at Iowa State in the final round. The Green Wave will travel to Colgate to take on New Hampshire on Friday at 4 o'clock. The winner slated to face either Colgate or Boston College on Sunday at 7. Tulsa earned a return trip to the NIVC after its inaugural appearance in 2018, and they will travel to Long Beach State to collide with UC Davis Wednesday at 8 p.m., and the winner to face host Long Beach State or Santa Clara Friday at 10. Houston making their first NIVC appearance after tying with Tulane for a single game back in the West Division during the American regular season. So they will head to UT Arlington to take on Sam Houston State Thursday at 6, with the winner advancing to play either host UT Arlington or UTSA on Friday at 7:30. The third round of the NIVC will be held December 9th through 12th, and the tournament semifinal round set for December 13th and 15th, with the championship match on December the 17th. And in men's soccer, Eddie Manjoma scored the golden goal just 18 seconds into overtime, lifting number 8 SMU to a 2-1 victory over number 9 seed UCF in the third round, the Sweet 16 of the NCAA Men's Soccer Championship this past Saturday night. The Mustangs advance to the quarterfinals, where they will meet number 1 Virginia in Charlottesville. The Mustangs, winner of 8 straight, including 4 in overtime, matching Virginia for the longest win streak among teams to reach the postseason in Division I. Next week's matchup with Cavaliers will be SMU's first NCAA quarterfinal appearance since 2010. UCF closes the season ranked number 8 in both national polls after earning the outright American Athletic Conference regular season title. The Knights advanced to the third round of the NCAA Championship for the first time in program history, and had a 6-1-2 record in overtime games this past season. Well, before we wrap things up, I want to remind you, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88, and also please check out my personal podcast sometime. JeffAllenSports.com is where you can find that. And don't forget, we will continue all throughout the Knightline Sports Network, keeping you covered on all things UCF and, of course, the AAC. Don't forget Sunday mornings on ESPN 580 Orlando, Andrew Fagley and friends with the Knightline Morning After Show. And then Andrew and Trace for the Knightline flagship podcast Sunday evenings. And Sons of UCF with Adam and Mike also on tap. So make sure you keep listening. And that'll wrap things up for this Championship Week edition of the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.